What's good, people? Welcome back to Rock Codes. I'm glad you're here. Want to give a shout out to all my new subscribers, all three of y'all. Thank you for subscribing and keeping track of what's going on here. So today, I wanted to kind of cover a way to implement authenticated routes in your React applications. Now, this works for React Web as well as for React Native. Just depends on what router you're using, React router versus React Navigation or React Native Navigation or whatever. But the overall structure and abstraction works the same way. And I kind of stole this from Kent C. Dodds. You might have come across a post of his about React, about authentication in React applications. But I kind of wanted to run through it real quick. So what I've done here is I have forked the basic setup from React Router from their website. They have code sandboxes there for different uses. And so we have a basic routing setup. You have a home page, an about page, a dashboard, and I want to go ahead and add another route, which is going to be, you guys can see that, it's going to be a, not login, but a profile page of some kind. Just something that, so basically the profile page and the dashboard, we're going to assume those are going to be authenticated. The home and the about, those will be accessible for anyone. The home page, of course, including probably some type of login functionality. And I'm going to add that their profile page here, profile. Notice I'm doing everything in one file. That's actually a thing you can do. A lot of people don't realize you don't have to have every component in a separate file, especially if you're just prototyping something or just getting started. Like, throw it all in one file and break things up as you go. So that's what I'm going to do here. Keep things simple for you guys. Let me also add that profile page. This is probably going to have to change, but we'll add the profile page here to the navigation. Boom. So now we got profile, dashboard, about, home. Now, this is going to require us to set up a context provider in React, and that's actually going to manage our authenticated state. So we'll try to keep it real simple, but as you'll see, it can be a very powerful tool. So I'm going to call this auth context. We're going to get in here, and I'm looking off to the side. It's because I'm checking my notes. I don't want to waste you guys' time watching me fumble around. So we're going to need React because we're returning JSX. We're going to need to create a context. And I'm going to obviously be using hooks here because why would you not use hooks? Well, unless your job doesn't let you, I mean, or you just love classes, you know. Some of you guys love classes. Hey, I ain't hating. Do what you got to do. So we got our imports here. Now, the way context works basically allows you to pass state through your entire component tree that's below that particular context. In this case, and usually, that context is going to be at the top level of your application. So the basic setup for context, we got to create context here, and you usually want to give it a default value. In this case, we're not going to give it anything yet because we're keeping this pretty general. Now, ultimately, we are going to export a provider. So in this case, usually what you do is, and we're going to start that here, we're going to actually create a component that's going to be our provider. Obviously, this is just a component. It has props. Boom. So ultimately, this component is going to return, sorry about that, our auth context dot provider, and it's going to give it some kind of value. And this value is actually what you would, this value is what you want to share through your entire component tree. In this case, it's going to be our authenticated state, but I'm going to call it auth context value here. We'll just say const auth context value equals it will be nothing for now. Let me move that over. We don't really need that. We're not doing anything there. So here we have the auth context. It's coming from here. You have a dot provider on that context. You're giving it a value. Now what I'm doing here by spreading props is usually not a good thing. You can get into trouble with it, but here obviously the way we'll be using this provider is all we're going to do is pass it some components we want to render. In this case it's just going to be our app component. So we're just going to pass those props straight on through, and this will render all those child components and they'll have access to this context. We also have a cute little helper here that basically, it's not a hook, but it allows you to just use auth, which allows you to use this auth context in your components. And we will export both of those, auth provider as well as our use auth here, for whatever needs to be done. Now obviously there's no logic in here, so let's see how we can kind of fake a little authentication in here. So obviously, I say obviously too much, sorry about that, guys and gals, hopefully, that are watching this. We'll add a use effect that runs on mount. This probably would do like some type of situation of fetching our auth state. What I'm gonna do is just kind of copy a bootleg fake auth that we did in the previous video. I got a sleep function here that just basically it just waits for some amount of time, so it looks like stuff is happening, and we will go ahead and sleep. Well, yeah, we'll sleep for 2 seconds, which is 2000 milliseconds, and then, well, missing a step here, right? Because we need some type of state that says if we're actually logged in. That usually would be if you're using like Firebase or something, it would give you an actual user object with some user data. In this case, we'll just make it a Boolean, so whether we're logged in or not. So logged in, set logged in, set logged in. All right, so after we wait 2 seconds, we'll just go ahead and set logged in to true. It's probably a very horrible way to do this, but for now, yeah, absolutely, this is the most horrible way to do this. Let's tweak this a little bit here, and instead of just automatically doing it, we'll have a login function. And this will trigger this logged in here. In my head, this use effect is actually where you'd like pull saved login state from local storage or async storage if you're talking about React Native. But in this case, we'll just have a login button, and then we have our logged in state here. So once you hit login, let's actually add these to our auth context value that we're passing down. So we're going to pass down the login function to every component in this tree, and we will pass down if we are logged in, which means we should have a log out, right? So let's make a log out function real quick. Log out will sleep 2 seconds, and then set logged in to false. All of this is pretty irrelevant to what you would actually be doing. I mean, there's a million ways to do auth, so we're just keeping this simple. You got to log in, you got to log out, and you got some kind of flag that says whether you're in or out. This use effect we don't even really need because it's that simple. There's no saved login state or anything we need to do with login when we mount this app, when this app first launches. So now that we have our auth context value set up, notice we are passing methods as well as a logged in value here down to our components. Now, one thing that people that know about context might be screaming about here is we are not at any time memoizing this auth context value, right? So anytime we call logout or login, the entire component tree is going to re-render. However, this is rarely going to happen in this case because this is our login. So you log in, stuff's going to render. You log out, stuff's going to render. There's really no reason to make performance optimizations at this point. No need for pre-optimization here. So we'll save. And now we need to wrap our app component with this provider. So we'll grab the provider name here. Now we're not going to do it at the app level here. What I'm actually going to try to do is do it in our index. You guys can see that. So we will import, probably could have did that smarter, but from auth context, and we're going to go ahead and grab the auth provider, and then we're going to wrap our app with the auth provider. Nothing fancy, folks. So this actually changes nothing so far in our app, right? Because we're not actually using this provider. The way that works, we're going to do it with hooks. So within this app component, we should now be able to, let's use our little helper we made. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh my God, I can't type. We're going to import this from auth context. Boom. Finally was able to type it. And then we can just say, what do we call it? Logged in? Is logged in? I don't know. Something like that. Let's look at it. I don't remember. My memory's not very good. I'm old. Logged in. Is that right? It is right. So we've got logged in equals use auth. And we're going to need to actually destructure that. So we're not, it's not in use. That's why it's underlined in red. But for right now, this is, well, we actually don't even need it in this component. What we want to do, well, we need the flag here, but we don't have a way to log in, right? So even at this point, nothing is happening yet, right? Because we need a way to log in. So let's modify that component, the log in here. So because we're using context, we actually need to use that context value in this this home component. So we have, I'm sorry, it's login, which is a method we can pull from use auth, right? And then we have a button. When we click it, we'll call login, and it's a login button. All right. So now, if I hit login, nothing actually happens because I broke it somehow. Let's figure out why. So let's log the logged in value at our top level and see what actually is happening when we click on that. Just using a template string here. So let's look at our console. Logged in is false. Oh wow, my mouse is sticking. Okay, here we go. All right, so we have login on the login page. Again, everything else is the same. Logged in is initially false. So if I hit login, it is now logged in is true. However, we don't see any visual indication because we are not using this logged in value yet. So now is where we need to kind of break things up and create the abstraction I was talking about, which actually involves defining our routes a little different here. So let's think about how we want to separate this out. Right now we have one switch and one router, and we have all of our routes in that one switch and that one router. Well, one way you can think about this is if you have an app that requires you to log in, you have an authenticated app, which users that are authenticated can access, and then you also have an unauthenticated app. So if you're not authenticated, this is all you can see is home, about in this case. And if you are authenticated, then you can see all of those routes, or maybe not. Maybe you don't even see the login page anymore or the about page. You can't get back to that because you're inside. Just like if you're waiting outside the club to get in, you see the line, you see the street outside, you see the weather. Once you get inside, all that's gone. You're inside. You're in the game. So let's go ahead and see what we need to do to break this up. Right now, sometimes what I like to do when I'm implementing some type of new API or some new kind of setup is I will code what I want to see or how I want it to work, and then work backwards from there. So what we really will want is to see, or what we really will want is when we are logged in, then we will only render the logged in app. So logged in, then authenticated routes, can't spell. And then if we are not logged in, oops, gotta close that up. Then we have unauthenticated routes. Okay. Ignore the errors for now. We don't even have any of this set up. However, where are we going to get them from? Well, what I would like to do is grab these both from some routes file that we're going to go ahead and define at some point, right? Unauthenticated routes, authenticated routes from, and we'll just say ./routes. All right. So let's take all of this route stuff and we will move it. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and move everything out, right? So we'll go ahead and create a new file. That file is going to be routes.js. Boom. Now let's switch back over to app. Since we got rid of all those routes from here, we can just also move completely those imports from React Router. Let's open that back up so you guys can see. Just getting the imports. And then we need our React. All right, so let's go ahead and define our unauthenticated routes, and we could actually just export const. Wow. Unauthenticated routes equals something, and we'll wrap this all up so it can stop being such a huge messy error. All right, so now this is returning, these are obviously not our unauthenticated routes completely. So let's move and create another component, authenticated routes. And we'll start moving. We'll make our own router in here because we're literally making two different apps in this case. So we will have two different routers with two different sets of routes. So I'm going to take these out of here. We'll bring that up here. And keep in mind, it doesn't have to be exactly set up this way. It's just that I want you guys to get the concept here of separating your routes into two different things. You're thinking, oh, okay, well, what if I have, routes that are more integrated? Maybe you have actual components that have unauthenticated and authenticated parts, or maybe you want to have individual routes that are authenticated. We'll get to that, but this is the main way that I like to set things up. So let's see. We said that the profile and the dashboard would only be authenticated. Please ignore all these errors. We'll bring those components in. All right, so we need a switch in here. Seriously. Boom, right? All right, so now we have two different sets of routes. And I close the div. Oh, this is a list. All right. And let's get our components. So like I said, we started off prototyping in one file, and then from there, we start to break things up once we, start to make our project a little more abstract. Many times as I've typed that, you would think that I would not mess it up. But that's simply not the way life works. All right, and then we need our dashboard. All right, so Control KS on Windows saves all the files at one time. So now we have separate components. We just need to get into our routes file here, and we need to import those. Now let's see, is it going to help us out here? It's 100% not going to help us out here. So all right, so let's close out the file manager situation. So now we see that we only get home and about because we're not logged in. Let's look at our app component again, just so that we are clear what's going on here. So now we're using the context. Initially that value is false. So when we return logged in, are we logged in? Nope. So we're not going to get the authenticated routes. We're going to get the unauthenticated routes. So if we log in now, we broke it somehow. So let's see what we did. We broke our unauthenticated route somehow. Let's take a look. Oh, you already got that open. Did I not save? Let's see. Oh, well, it would help if you spell stuff right. And this is why I like TypeScript. That would have not happened. Save. Let's refresh that just to be on the safe side. We log in, it waits 2 seconds, and boom, now we have dashboard and profile. All right, so let's make a log out button on this profile component. That means we're going to need to pull in our auth context here. Not from React. Come on, man. That is in our auth context. And we will go ahead and destructure from that use auth. We want log out. Pretty sure that's what we called it. We'll add a button. To log out. On click, it will log out. Let's save it. So now if we go to profile, we can log out. It waits 2 seconds and boom, we're back on home and about. And we no longer have access to the authenticated routes. So like I said, folks, that is pretty much the way or the types of apps I usually work with and the way I like to set it up. To me, it's so clear what's happening here, right? All right, so basically we have our basic login set up. We can log in, hits the back end, it goes to our authenticated routes. We can log out. Boom, we're logged out. So this is one way to set things up. So even with this particular setup though, you could also set up your app so that, I mean, you have this hook to check your authentication, and your whole app is wrapped in this authenticated context. So technically, if you just wanted to have one set of routes, like you could just have authenticated routes be your thing, right? Let's just pick on unauthenticated routes. That's all we're returning, right? Let's go ahead and, I don't know, let's add another route for no reason at all in particular. We'll say we have a blog on here. That is on the blog route. And then we'll make us a nice blog component. Let's copy dashboard. All right. And then we need to import that. Blorg. All right. Save all the files. Okay, so we no longer have that split between being logged in and not as far as our routes. We have one app here, one set of routes. So let's say for some reason this blog, we only want this to be accessible by authenticated users. So one thing we could do, and I'm just kind of going off the cuff here, so give me a sec on how exactly this works, but I know that I have access to this use auth hook anywhere in my component tree. So I can pull this in from our context, which is another level up. So we could say something like, in the simplest way at this level, we could say, are we logged in? Then return the blog. Otherwise, we could return not logged in, right? So then if we go to blog, it shows the blog because we're logged in. However, okay, let me refresh. That's the problem here, I think. Yeah. So we have this other set of routes. The blog doesn't show me anything because I'm not logged in. Now, this content though, on a lower level that may or may not matter to you, because we're doing it this way, this content likely is still going to be sent to the client side. Like it's definitely a possibility. So that's one thing to think about when you're doing authentication to this level of detail. And if there's ways around it, we won't get into it, but it's just one thing to keep in mind. If you're not just going to completely bundle things separately, you know, you could be bundling authenticated code, client-side code with authenticated or unauthenticated client-side code, which shouldn't matter because you shouldn't be including anything critical in that JS. However, Another thing you could do besides just conditional rendering, you could redirect here. So let's see, I have no idea how you redirect. Let's look that up real quick and we'll throw that in here and see how that goes, right? So where's that thing? Here it is, redirect. And a lot of times I see people using like a programmatic redirect where you're checking some condition in a handler or something, and then like doing a history.push to redirect. And I feel like that kind of is not the best way to do it, because your JSX is really where the action's happening. So you don't want to have too much router kind of stuff happening outside of that. So we can, we can just redirect to, I guess, home if they are not logged in, right? That should make sense. So home, about, we go to the blog. Clearly this route is wrong. I'm not doing, my routes are probably, don't look too much into how I have these routes defined. I just copied the example. Oh, it's because it's slash. Duh. I think I had it right the first time. Yeah, about, blog. And see, when I went to blog, I'm seeing the login page, basically. Home, about, blog, see? Login. If we do log in, are we gonna see some action here? Well, did we break something? I don't like that. Let's modify this home component, because it looks, if you're logged in, it's pretty stupid that you're still seeing a logged in button. Right? That doesn't make any sense. So logged in, then yeah, because we kind of flipped the whole script on how we're doing this. So kind of, let's do welcome, and then we can log out, and we can log out, and we need to also bring in log out from our context. Save. All right, let's refresh the browser and make sure we're starting over from here. So we're at home, we have about, and if we go to blog, that's taking us back to the login page, redirect, which we probably can see. Yeah, see, it's taking us back to root in the actual address bar. So now if I log in, 1, 2, welcome, boom. So I can go to blog now. I still see the about page, which doesn't care either way. And then on my home page, I can log out. All right. So again, this is probably closer to the type of setup that you'll usually see if you're out here on the web just looking up random help for how to do this stuff. And you know, it is another option. A lot of times this is the type of level that you need to drop into to get what you need to get done for your particular use case. Again, this is, like I said, this is just two different ways to do the same thing. You can either completely separate your two apps, authenticated and unauthenticated, which I find very clean, simple to work with, because then you don't have to worry about all these details in each of your individual components, like how we had to with the blog. We had to get into here, and now this blog component has to know about if you're logged in or not and behave accordingly. And then even in our home component, so now our home component has to know all about, oh, there's auth, and I need to be able to look at that and render accordingly. But again, in some cases, this is the level of detail you need. So just one thing I wanted to show you guys about authentication and or setting up routes for authentication, not actual authentication in React applications. If you do want details about how to authenticate, or you have a certain service that you want me to cover about how to implement in React or even React Native, maybe like Firebase or Auth0, or the Amazon authentication, AWS Amplify, drop me a comment and let me know. Other than that, hope this has been helpful to you. I appreciate you stopping by once again. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to see what I'm going to be doing here in the future. And hit me up on social media. Peace.